Welcome, learners, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're plunging into the tumultuous 17th century. We're focusing on a figure who, well, our sources reveal, evokes quite a range of emotions. From being, revered as a demigod to, on the other hand, vilified as a rebel and robber.
Yeah.
We're talking about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
A truly fascinating figure.
We have some incredible source material today. There's a biography by Meta Deshmukh Bhaskaran who brings a really unique perspective.
Yeah, she's Marathi native, right?
Yeah.
And approached it consciously with an unbiased heart.
Exactly. After years working as a health columnist, apparently. So it's a fresh lens. This deep dive really aims to unpack what truly set Shivaji apart.
How he challenged destiny, as the author puts it.
Yes, and why his story is still so relevant, for us today.
It's definitely a powerful narrative. The author really sets the scene, doesn't she? Describing 17th century India as just, well, riddled with slavery, religious conflict, mind-numbing carnage. So our mission today is, I guess, to extract those core insights, the nuggets of knowledge about Shivaji's rise, his innovations, and the huge impact he had.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Where do we start? The world he was born into.
I think we have to. You can't understand the man without understanding the time. The crucible of conflict, setting the 17th century scene.
Right. To really get Shivaji, we need to grasp the world he inherited. Our sources paint a vivid picture, often pretty brutal, medieval India under various invaders.
And it goes way back. You have to connect this to the bigger picture. The history of invasions really set a precedent.
Right.
I mean, imagine the despair. As early as Muhammad bin Qasim's Arab army defeating King Dahir, or Mahmud of Ghazni sweeping across India, declaring holy war.
That source mentioned Jayapala's suicide after his kingdom was just stripped bare.
Yeah, 70 million coins and 700,000 carts of gold and silver. Just staggering numbers. It creates this deep-seated sense of loss.
And it wasn't just a northern thing, was it? Our sources talk about the south, too, the Yadava kingdom falling to Aladdin Khilji.
And Khilji was known for incredible brutality. One source mentions him slaughtering, 15,000 to 30,000 males in one day.
Just horrific.
Which really brings up an important question, Why did these powerful dynasties keep falling?
Good point. Was it just military defeat?
Well, Mehendale's work suggests it was more complex. He writes that these dynasties were unable to bury old feuds and forge an alliance against their common enemy, internal divisions.
Ah, okay, so they couldn't unite.
Exactly. Even the mighty Vijayanagar Empire,
Yeah.
founded by two brothers who actually defied the Tughlaqs and reconverted to Hinduism. A powerful statement.
But it still fell.
Eventually, yeah.
Right.
Battle of Talikota, 1565. The aftermath was just devastating. Nearly 100,000 subjects slaughtered, 5 months of plunder, just destruction.
Wow. And then into this already fractured landscape,
Yeah.
the European powers arrive.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really disturbing with the Portuguese and the Goan Inquisition.
Tell us about that. The sources sounded quite graphic.
They are. Horrifying persecution described. Poor Hindus being enticed to convert with offers of free rice, jobs.
A kind of economic coercion.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Leading to countless temples destroyed and churches built, and the Inquisition itself demanded by St. Francis Xavier, apparently.
Yeah, St. Francis Xavier.
That's what the source states. It describes these Inquisition chambers with torture tools like the Queen of Torture to dislocate bones and other methods. Just unspeakable things, cutting off genitals, dismembering children, tearing women's breasts. It's hard to even read.
Unbelievable cruelty.
Yeah.
So, beyond that direct brutality, what was the everyday social and political reality like for ordinary people in the Deccan?
Well, the Deccan was this melting pot. You had Persians, Afghans, Turks, Abyssinians, largely forming the ruling class.
Okay.
And even new converts, the Deccani Muslims, often weren't seen as equals by the aristocratic Muslims, so layers of hierarchy.
And among Hindus.
That stratification continued. The traditional Varna system, our sources say, had kind of devolved into this narrow orthodoxy where caste bonds grew tighter, suffocating the society.
So practical discrimination.
Oh, absolutely. Lower castes forbidden from entering temples, even from drawing water from public wells. A really rigid, oppressive structure.
So boiling it down, what does this all mean for the common person day to day?
It meant living under a system designed to exploit you. Our sources really highlight the Watan and Jagadari systems.
Explain those. Watandars.
Right. They were hereditary revenue collectors. Think local lords, patils, deshmukhs. They collect revenue from a village, say, 2,000 Huns, that's a gold coin,
Okay.
but then they'd only pay maybe 200 or 300 Huns to the central government.
So they pocketed the vast majority.
Exactly. They grew wealthy and powerful by building bastions, castles, and strongholds and enlisting troops. They basically became little kings, resisting government officers, even robbing travelers, looting territories.
And the Jagirdars, were they any better?
Not according to the sources, no. They were granted huge land areas, jagirs, and acted like independent rulers too, committing crimes by robbing, murdering, burning, and devastating the land. Total impunity, it seems.
So complete fragmentation of power.
And that self-interest, that fragmentation, it extended even to the Hindu warrior families. Constant petty battles, family feuds that smoldered for generations, killing each other over these watans, these land rights, even among priests, the sources say.
It's just a cycle of violence and self-interest. What a world to be born into.
2. The spark of Swaraj, Shivaji's early vision and foundations. Okay, so in this fractured, oppressive world, this young man, Shivaji, starts to forge a completely different path. Let's unpack how his journey began. It wasn't exactly a promising start, was it?
No, not at all. His father's Jagir in Pune, where he grew up initially, was desolate, ravaged by famine, war. The source says it was so bad it was plowed with the help of donkeys, considered inauspicious for cultivation.
Wow, sounds cursed.
People literally thought it was. But this is where Dadaji Kondadeo, Shivaji's administrator, steps in. He took on the near-impossible task of bringing people back, revitalizing the land.
How did he even start?
Well, what's fascinating is Daji's pragmatism. He tackled that superstition head-on. He had young Shivaji dig a small patch of land with a tiny plow made of gold with big fanfare, publicly declaring the curse had been removed.
Clever psychology.
Very. And then he offered incredible terms to farmers. Start paying just 1 ruka, a tiny copper coin the first year, gradually increasing to 1 rupee in the 7th year. Basically, almost free land to start, plus loans, tools, seeds, real support.
So what does this all mean? It's a foundation of trust, isn't it?
Absolutely. It meant hope. And it cemented Shivaji's path. He chose not to be just another glorified servant in some sultan's court. He decided to fight for his people's freedom, Swar.
Self-rule. And he brought everyone into the fold.
That seems key. He empowered everyone. Tribesmen like the Ramoshis, Dongars, Pradis, people who lived in the forests, knew the land. He brought them into his confidence, made them his best informers and scouts, gave them rent-free land, built a network.
But how did he fund all this? Giving away land, offering loans.
Good question. The sources point to him finding initial funds in Mullah Ahmed's treasury in Kalyan Fort after capturing it. A necessary windfall, perhaps.
Which leads to one of his most famous ideas, the peasant soldiers.
Yeah, truly innovative. Farmers work the fields during sowing, during harvest, but the rest of the time, they serve as soldiers.
A militia deeply connected to the land.
Exactly. And loyal. That loyalty was solidified by his very first landmark judgment. He directly challenged those powerful Watandars.
The ones fleecing the peasants.
Yes, the ones who treated cultivators and their families like private property. Shivaji stood up to them, and that act, our source says, made the vulnerable people of the Mabel region fall in love with Shivaji. That's a strong statement.
You can see why. It built this incredible early trust. And that led to military success, starting with forts.
Right. Shivaji immediately grasped the strategic value of forts. He started renovating ruined ones, like Murumdeo, which he renamed Rajgad, his first capital, and Tirana.
Getting his strongholds ready.
Precisely. And it paid off quickly. When his father Shahaji was imprisoned by the Bijapur Sultan, Muhammad Adil Shah sent Fath Khan with 5,000 horsemen after Shivaji.
A major threat early on.
Huge. But Shivaji strategically shifted his base to the stronger Purandar fort.
And what happened there is pure deep dive material, isn't it? Fath Khan attacks.
He does. His men start climbing Purandar, but they're met with this meteoric shower of boulders, arrows, rockets, total chaos. Then Shivaji's commander, Kavji, emerged from the cliffs and fell upon the climbers like lightning.
Ambush from above.
Classic guerrilla tactics. Fath Khan returned defeated and demoralized. And remember, Shivaji's army was tiny then, 2,000 or 3,000, mostly foot soldiers, against 5,000 cavalry.
An incredible victory. It really shows his early tactical brilliance.
And his understanding of forts. His fort management system was also unique. They weren't just garrisons.
How so?
They were small, self-sufficient habitats. They cultivated crops inside, harvested rainwater. Commandants had incredibly strict orders. Gates had to be shut by dusk, period. Not opened at night for anyone, even if Shivaji himself was at the doorstep.
Wow. Strict discipline.
And the people were taught to see the fort as their mother, a place of ultimate refuge and safety. Third, the rise of a kingdom, strategic reforms and expansions.
Okay, so with these early successes, Shivaji starts consolidating power and, importantly, changing how things were run. Let's unpack his administrative reforms. They seem pretty radical.
Oh, absolutely radical for the time. He drastically cut the power of those Watandars we talked about, and he completely abolished the Jagirdari system, granting land in lieu of salary.
Completely. How did people get paid then?
That's the revolutionary part. Every employee, civil or military, was paid directly from his treasury, cash payment.
So, no more intermediaries growing rich and powerful.
Exactly. It removed the shackles of the rigid old structure that threatened the central power. Loyalty flowed directly to Shivaji, not to a local lord.
And his focus on the farmers continued.
Definitely. He insisted revenue be collected in kind, so grain, not cash, which protected farmers from fluctuating prices. He built state storehouses, provided loans for seeds, cattle, tools, recovered gradually. Real support.
It sounds like he genuinely cared about the peasantry.
The evidence suggests so, and that extended to his army's discipline. He was extremely strict. Soldiers were paid regularly, specifically so they would not harass the farmers for food and fodder.
He didn't want his own army becoming oppressors.
Precisely. There's a letter from 1671 where he warns his men explicitly, don't trouble the Ryot, the farmer, at any cost. He even adds, or else the Ryot may say that the Mughal raids are better than the harassment by the Maratha army.
Wow. That's holding his own forces to a high standard.
A very high standard. He understood that popular support was crucial.
So, with this foundation getting stronger, he starts looking to expand, westward, right, towards Javali and the Konkan coast.
Yes. Strategic moves. The Javali Valley was key. Incredibly difficult terrain, impassable, described as turning war elephants into rogue elephants.
Why was this so important?
Capturing it was the first step that would take Shivaji away from being the son of Jagirdar and a step closer to his dream of Swaraj. It controlled vital routes.
And his conflict there with Chandra More, it sounds like Shivaji was pretty direct.
Very direct. The source quotes Shivaji's demand. Give up Javali, tie your hands behind your back, and come and kneel before me. If you do not, we shall eliminate you. No ambiguity there.
And the fight.
Brutal. Javali was bathed in blood, the source says, but the fortress fell quickly.
And this victory significantly boosted his power.
Hugely. His army swelled, reaching 10,000 horsemen and an equal number of footmen, a major expansion. And it's here, in Javali, that he built the formidable Pratapgarh fort.
The one with innovative defenses.
That's right. Things like a double line of fortification. And even practical things we mentioned, like toilets on the ramparts for guards at night. Attention to detail.
Okay, so Javali secured. Then the move into Konkan, the coastal region. What drove that?
Revenue, primarily. Access to maritime trade was crucial, but it meant challenging the cities of Murud Janjira.
Oh, were they?
Abyssinians, basically. Naval mercenaries controlling the Janjira seafort considered invincible with its massive walls and 19 rounded bastions. A tough nut to crack.
And he's also running up against European powers here too, right? The Portuguese again.
Yes. And the sources really detail their actions in Konkan, aggressively forcing conversions, destroying temples, and that ongoing horror of the Inquisition where thousands were persecuted and killed.
It's just constant pressure.
And economic control, too.
Yeah.
Imagine, local Indian merchants had to buy passport papers from foreigners to sail their own seas. Kartaz system, it was called.
Humiliating. And expensive, I bet.
Absolutely. So Shivaji decides, right, I need my own navy. A frightening enterprise, the source calls it. Even the Mughals and Sultanates struggled with building effective navies.
How did he manage it?
He used funds from that Kalyan fort treasury again, hired Portuguese engineers, ironically, and built 20 galleots.
Galleots? What are they?
Lightweight, versatile ships, good in deep water, but also shallow coastal waters. Perfect for the Konkan coast.
Smart. And he didn't just build ships, he implemented trade policies too. Something about salt.
Yeah, fascinating detail. He started a policy of protection for local salt producers. Heavily taxed imported salt, especially the one from Bardèche, which was Portuguese territory.
So protecting local industry.
Exactly. And the source notes, perhaps slightly tongue-in-cheek, that he inadvertently started the first salt march centuries before Gandhi.
Huh. That's a great connection. So ultimately, he gained control of Konkan.
Yes. Eventually conquered and possessed the entire Konkan province, organizing it into 9 new administrative subhas, a major achievement.
While all this is happening, Shivaji building his base, The wider Mughal world is in turmoil too. Aurangzeb's rise to power.
Right. And Aurangzeb faced his own challenges, especially when he was governor in the Deccan before becoming emperor. His provinces there were less fertile than northern ones.
Meaning less revenue.
Much less, yielding less than one-third of the estimated revenue. His father, Emperor Shah Jahan, constantly accused him of financial fraud, even cut his soldiers' salaries. Lots of tension there.
And speaking of Shah Jahan, the Mughal succession process itself sounds unbelievably brutal.
Oh, it was. The sources are clear. Every emperor had to fight or kill or maim or incarcerate his brothers and half-brothers. Shah Jahan himself murdered 5 or 6 brothers and half-brothers to get the throne.
Game of Thrones, but real life.
Pretty much. And this all culminated in that vicious war of succession between Aurangzeb and his main rival, his brother Dara Shikoh. The Battle of Somagar was decisive.
What happened there?
Dara, despite having a larger army, made critical errors. His hesitancy was advantage Aurangzeb. He drew up his artillery poorly in a single line and then moved his own troops in front of their artillery, basically blocking his own firepower.
Tactical blunders.
Huge ones. And Aurangzeb was utterly ruthless. He even bribed one of Dara's key generals, Khalilullah Khan, to switch sides or stand down.
Betrayal on top of everything else.
That's how Aurangzeb secured the throne. Ruthlessness, strategy, and exploiting weakness. And this is the Emperor Shivaji would increasingly find himself up against. 4. Iconic confrontations, Shivaji's audacious moves.
Okay, this brings us to some of Shivaji's most legendary encounters.
Yeah.
Real David and Goliath stuff sometimes. Let's start with the big one. Afzal Khan.
Right. Ali Adil Shah, the Sultan of Bijapur, was absolutely fed up with Shivaji. He sends Afzal Khan,
The ace warrior.
yeah, one of their ace warriors who had never failed in the battlefield, comes with a massive army, 10,000 cavalrymen, a few hundred war elephants, a show of force.
But the sources say it wasn't just about force.
Exactly. The mission inherently did not involve use of force to such an extent to annihilate him as it needed to reduce his forts. The real plan relied on, and I'm quoting here, deceit, cunning, guile, duplicity, foul play, and trickery.
A trap. So what did Shivaji do? He knew this.
It seems so. He played it brilliantly. He lured Afzal Khan deep into the impassable, perilous Javali region during the monsoon, delay tactics, made it expensive for Khan's huge army just to sit there.
Smart. Word him down.
And he pretended weakness, drew on that Sun Tzu wisdom, irritate him, pretend to be weak that he may grow arrogant, made Khan underestimate him.
Setting the stage for that meeting. November 10th, 1659.
The famous meeting in the palatial Shamiana, the tent, on neutral ground. The source describes Afzal Khan making the first move, tightening his grip on Shivaji in an embrace and raising a dagger.
But Shivaji was prepared.
He was, wearing a jacket made of steel mesh underneath his clothes, and he had concealed Wanak tiger's claws fitted on his hand. He thrust them into Khan's waist. Instantly effective. And just as Khan's bodyguard, Sayed Banda, rushed in, Shivaji's own guard, Jeev Mahalya, cut him down immediately. Swift, decisive action.
Wow. But this act, it caused controversy, right? Even at the time.
Oh, definitely. Some saw it as pure cunning, maybe even treachery. That English chaplain, Ascaliot, called Shivaji distrustful, secret, subtle, cruel, and perfidious. Strong words.
But others saw it differently.
Yeah. Varsha Balsley, in one of our sources, makes a strong point. She asks, why should those who perceive Shivaji as a native ruler seeking Swaraj get hives over the ethics in who drew first blood?
Fair point. Self-defense in a treacherous situation.
She compares it to Krishna advising the Pandavas in the Mahabharata to use plain old realpolitik. Basically, when facing an enemy set on destroying you by any means, you respond accordingly.
A pragmatic view. Okay, next iconic moment. The escape from Panhala Fort. Another tight spot.
A very tight spot. Shivaji and about 8,000 men were trapped by Sidi Jahar's tight siege. Things looked grim.
And the English were involved here too, not helping Shivaji.
No, quite the opposite. A man named Henry Revington betrayed Shivaji, supplying Sidi Johar with long-range cannon and explosive to break the fort walls. Double-crossed.
So what does this desperate situation mean? How does he get out?
He devises this incredibly cunning plan. Feigns surrender, sends an envoy of Akil, offering to give back all his forts, promises to surrender in person the next day, July 13th, lulls the besiegers into thinking it's over.
Buying time.
Exactly. Then, under the cover of a dark, rainy night, Shivaji escapes. but he uses a double.
Ah, the sacrifice part.
Yes. This is where Shiva Kashid, who was Shivaji's barber and resembled him, plays a crucial role. He knowingly rides in the main palanquin, drawing the pursuit.
Knowing he'd likely be killed.
Facing certain death, as the source puts it, and he was, Masood, Sidi Jahar's son-in-law, caught the palanquin and slayed him immediately. But that act bought Shivaji precious time.
Incredible sacrifice. But the escape wasn't over yet.
Not quite. As Shivaji raced towards Vishalgarh Fort, Masood realized the deception and gave chase with cavalry. This leads to another legendary stand.
Baji Prabhu Deshpande.
Yes. Baji Prabhu and about 300 men held a narrow pass, God-kind, later called Pavan-kind, the Sacred Pass. He held on for 2 hours, fighting desperately against Masood's cavalry.
Just 300 men.
Against a much larger force. He was waiting for a signal 3 cannon blasts from Vishalgarh, confirming Shivaji had reached safety.
Did he hear it?
He did, eventually, but by then he was gravely wounded. He and most of his 300 men were killed, but not before Shivaji reached the crest of Vishalgarh. A heroic last stand, often compared to the Spartans at Thermopylae.
Truly epic. Okay, from defense and escape to offense. The raid on Shaista Khan at Lal Mahal in Pune. This sounds incredibly audacious.
It really was. Shaista Khan was Aurangzeb's uncle, the Mughal governor, Subhadar. He'd occupied Pune, Shivaji's childhood home, and was crippling the local economy, the spine of the agriculture industry.
For hitting him where you lived.
Exactly. But Shaista Khan's camp was massive. A huge yet lethargic beast, the source calls it, divided by nationality, religion. The commanders, the Mansabdars, were living like kings in luxury, complacent.
And Shivaji knew Lal Mahal well.
Intimately. He'd played hide-and-seek there as a child. He used that knowledge. On the night of April 5th, going into the 6th, 1663, his men infiltrated the camp.
Ow.
In disguise. Some even posed as a wedding procession to get past guards. Brilliant deception. They hit the palace itself.
Chaos ensues.
Total chaos. In the confusion, Shaista Khan's eldest son was killed. Shaista Khan himself barely escaped through a window, taking minor injuries, but famously losing some fingers. More importantly, he lost his prestige. Humiliated.
What's fascinating here is that comparison the source makes.
To Operation Neptune Spear, the raid that got bin Laden.
Yeah, calling both most audacious military stunts.
It's a bold comparison, but you see the point. Meticulous planning, stealth, hitting a high-value target against overwhelming odds. But, as the source notes, Shivaji did not have any modern military helicopters, guns, or surveillance equipment, just courage and cunning.
Incredible, but Shaista Khan's invasion had damaged the region's economy. Shivaji needed funds, didn't he?
Desperately. Which leads him to target the financial heart of the Mughals in the west, the port city of Surat.
The richest trading port.
Exactly. And again, meticulous intelligence work. Shivaji's chief of intelligence, Bahirji Naik, lived undercover in Surat for weeks beforehand.
What did he find?
He observed the governor, Inayat Khan, corrupt. The city was supposedly protected by an old and crumbling wall, while Khan was spending imperial funds on lavish weddings, ripe for the picking.
So Shivaji strikes. January 6th, 1664.
Hits them hard and fast. The townspeople apparently fled with their families in just a few hours. Panic.
And the loot?
Vast riches in silver, gold, and jewels, estimated at 6.6 million rupees worth. A staggering amount.
Did he just take everything?
Interestingly, no. The sources note he spared the European establishments, maybe not wanting to provoke them directly yet, and also the house of a merchant named Mohandas Parekh, who is known for his charity work.
Huh. Selective plundering.
Seems so. And afterwards, he didn't just disappear. He sent a letter to the Surat authorities demanding a yearly tribute of 1.2 million rupees.
Oh.
Adding insult to injury and making a clear political statement, v. the crown and the legacy, coronation and enduring impact.
So after these incredibly daring exploits, Shivaji enters a period of, what? Rebuilding.
Yeah.
Consolidation.
Yeah.
Before the next big step.
Exactly. From about 1666 to 1669, after his escape from Agra and the subsequent treaty, he really had to begin from the scratch. The Treaty of Purandar had forced him to give up many forts, leaving him with only 12.
A major setback.
It was. But the source makes a powerful point here. Shivaji created not only an army, but while doing so, created a nation as well. Comparing this nation-building aspect to Alexander or Napoleon.
High praise. And central to this was his military code, wasn't it? We touched on it earlier, but it seems unique for the time.
Extremely unique. In an era where armies routinely treated women and children of the conquered lands as perks of war, Shivaji laid down strict, explicit rules.
Like what?
No one was allowed to harass peasants for either food or fodder, we mentioned that. But also, his forces were forbidden from capturing women and children. They were ordered to respect Muslims, the Book of God, or anyone's women.
That's remarkable. Did even his enemies acknowledge this?
Yes, even the Mughal historian Kafi Khan, who absolutely hated Shivaji, grudgingly praised him for this code of conduct. That speaks volumes.
So, what held his army together, if not plunder and abuse?
The source points to a strict chain of command, much more organized than the Mughal Mansabdari system, which could be chaotic. His cavalry, remember, had Sildars with their own horses and Bargers with state horses' high mobility, and crucially, all received their salary in awns directly from the treasury.
That direct payment again, building loyalty and discipline.
Exactly, a professional, disciplined force with a clear ethos.
Meanwhile, back in the Mughal court, Aurangzeb's reign is taking an even darker turn.
Yes, especially after Shivaji's escape from Agra, which infuriated him. His fanaticism, as the source terms it, really escalated.
How so?
He ordered the removal of a carved railing from the Keshava Rai temple in Mathura, simply because it was associated with his defeated brother, Darashuko. His reasoning: in Islam, it is improper even to look at a temple.
Wow.
And that was just the start. In April 1669, a general fatwa, or decree, went out for the demolition of temples and established schools of Hindus throughout the empire, followed by brutal suppression of rebellions like the Jat Revolt, where the leader, Gokla, had his limbs hacked off one after another in full view of the public.
A deliberate policy of persecution and terror.
It seems so. And it's against this backdrop that Shivaji's desire for formal recognition as a sovereign ruler becomes really critical.
He needed to be seen as more than just a rebel or a Jagirdar's son.
Precisely. Our sources state his desire for autonomy was deep and sincere. He was very conscious of his own identity as a Hindu in a universe politically dominated by the Muslims. He needed the legitimacy of kingship.
But a formal Hindu coronation hadn't happened in that region for ages, right?
No, not a full-fledged coronation in Indic mode for centuries. So in a way, it was an invented tradition, a seeming revival of an ancient practice that was in fact quite new, but incredibly potent symbolically.
So what does this all mean practically? How did he arrange it?
He found Gagaphat, a renowned Sanskrit scholar from Varanasi. Gagaphat essentially had to reinvent and write Hindu coronation rituals suitable for the occasion, establishing Shivaji's lineage as a kshatriya, a warrior ruler.
Connecting him to ancient traditions.
Exactly. The mantras invoked the power and virtues of Vedic gods Indra's protection, the sun's light, Yama's justice, legitimizing his rule in traditional Hindu terms.
And the ceremony itself. June 6, 1674, at Raigad.
It must have been magnificent. Raigad was his new capital, a formidable hill fort. Henry Maxenden, the head of the English embassy from Bombay, was there and witnessed Shivaji seated in a magnificent throne.
What did Oxenden describe?
He noted the emblems of government and dominion surrounding Shivaji. 2 great fishes' heads of gold symbolizing protection and water, linking to his navy perhaps, gold scales for justice, and a swastika, signifying a good habitation or auspicious rule.
Powerful symbols. And he took a new title.
Yes. Kshatriya Kulawantasa Sri Raja Shivachatrapi, asserting his warrior caste, lineage, and sovereign status as Chhatrapati, Lord of the Umbrella, a symbol of paramount sovereignty.
A huge statement to Aurangzeb and the other sultans.
Absolutely. A declaration of independence and legitimacy.
After the coronation, did his campaigns continue? I know there was a major expedition to the south, Karnataka.
Yes, his Karnataka campaign was strategically crucial. The aim was to weaken the Adil Shahi Sultanate further by controlling the Cholamandalam coast down south.
Why was that coast so important?
It was vital for their supply of war horses, mostly imported from Arabia and Persia. Cut off the horses, you cripple their cavalry. He even allied temporarily with the Qutbi Shahi Sultan of Golconda for this campaign, who agreed to pay him 3,000 hans, 15,000 rupees a day.
Strategic alliances, even with rival sultanates when it suited.
Pure realpolitik. But while Shivaji was maneuvering, the Mughal court remained a viper's nest.
More betrayals.
Oh, yes. Our sources describe Aurangzeb cold-bloodedly poisoning Prithvi Singh, the young son of Maharaja Jaswant Singh Rathod of Marwar, after Jaswant Singh's death. Then he moved to annex Marwar entirely, just ruthless consolidation of power.
It seems no one was safe from Aurangzeb's machinations.
Which raises a painful question about loyalty and betrayal, even closer to home for Shivaji, his own son, Sambhaji.
Yes. Sambhaji defected to the Mughals.
He did in December 1678, lured away by the Mughal general Diler Khan with promises of high rank, a mansab, a terrible blow for Shivaji.
Why did he do it? Was it just ambition?
The sources suggest complex reasons, perhaps disagreements with Shivaji or court politics, but Diler Khan certainly used him. He used Sambhaji as bait, attacking the Maratha fort of Bhupalgad and committing atrocities, amputating one hand of each prisoner, trying to force Shivaji's hand or demoralize the Marathas.
Did Sambhaji realize he was being used?
Eventually, yes. He saw he was a mere tool in Diler Khan's game. He managed to escape from the Mughal camp and dramatically reunited with Shivaji at Panhala Fort in December 1679.
Must have been a difficult reunion.
One can only imagine. But he was back in the fold shortly before Shivaji's death. Outro.
And Shivaji's death came quite suddenly, didn't it? April 3, 1680. A poignant end to such an action-packed life. But, as our sources passionately argue, his dream, his idea of Swaraj, did not die with him.
No, it certainly didn't. Which brings us back to that fundamental question. What was this whole struggle really about?
How do the sources frame it?
One source puts it quite starkly. For Aurangzeb, Shivaji was simply in the way of absolute power, an obstacle to be removed. For Shivaji, Aurangzeb was a bully who needed to learn that one couldn't just do what one pleases.
A clash of worldviews, essentially. Power versus resistance.
You could see it that way. The source calls it a centuries-old civilizational war. And incredibly, that struggle continued for 27 long years after Shivaji's death.
Even after Sambhaji was captured and brutally tortured and killed by Aurangzeb?
Yes. Despite that horrific martyrdom, the Marathas kept fighting, unified by Shivaji's spirit. They eventually wore down the Mughals, leading to what historians called the Maratha century in the 18th century. Power in India eventually transferred from the Marathas to the British significantly, not back to the Mughals.
Shivaji's legacy fundamentally altered the course of Indian history then.
Undeniably. Which brings up a final fascinating point from our sources about history itself.
Oh, what's that?
The author highlights that the problem with history is that it is political. We often crave the absolute truth, the definitive account. But maybe, the source suggests, what we need isn't the absolute truth.
What do they mean by that?
Take the Afzal Khan incident. Whether Shivaji used tiger claws or a different kind of dagger is ultimately a small detail. Fascinating, but small. The point, however, remains that Afzal Khan was defeated. The strategic outcome, the impact, is what truly matters.
So focus on the bigger picture, the results, the legacy.
Perhaps. It comes down to appreciating the cunning, the strategy, the refusal to be underestimated. Shivaji's legacy, empowering a people, creating a nation, setting the stage for modern India. It's a powerful testament to challenging destiny.
A figure who truly reshaped his world.
Absolutely. So what does this all mean for you, listening to this? Maybe consider how understanding these complex historical narratives with all their political layers and disputed details can help you critically examine the stories and narratives you encounter today.
How might Shivaji's mix of, well, audacious strategy, his administrative innovations, and that deep connection with his people, how might that inspire you to challenge destiny in your own sphere, in your own way?
A powerful thought to end on.